I look under the hood with their blood, urine, stool, hair, saliva, and I always find.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Anders Varner, Doug Larson, Coach Travis Mash. In today's episode, we have a brand new voice, the new co-host on Barbell Shrugged, Dan Garner. For everybody at home, if you would go back and scroll back in your feed, the show How to Increase Your Testosterone by 300% was the first time that we actually met Dan. And now you're a host on the show, dude. That's a rapid. It took me longer. Mine was a much flatter participation curve. Doug only let me on a couple times. I had to become his friend and all this stuff. But welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks, guys. It's a win and a loss, right? Because the win is I'm the co-host. The loss is it's all downhill after here. I mean, this is the pinnacle of everything. My entire career is what I've been working towards. So yeah. I'm absolutely pumped to be here and hanging out with you guys.
I'll tell you, the day that I took over, everybody went from they were like, who are you? What? Why? What happened? Why this guy? It was crazy. Then I had to go and Google my name afterwards, and it was not pretty for a little while. People had to get used to this raspy voice that has been developed by yelling through DMX's voice in gyms. They were not prepared for it. So, dude, I want to introduce you to the audience. We've been working with you and building programs now for the last couple months, and really the reason I wanted to bring you on as a co-host is we do a really good job of talking about strength training. Mash getting his PhD, Doug and I have owned gyms and coached tons of people, but we are not lab-based nutritionists. And in working with you, just in you doing all of my labs, Doug's labs, there's a wealth of knowledge that exists on this planet that has not been uncovered, because what you do takes a long time to actually get good at. And I'd love to just start out by kind of why did you take this insanely difficult route of becoming a nutritionist, but not just saying eat your macros? Like, why did you go the lab route?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a real big question, right? You learn things through trial and error. I mean, just like in strength training with you guys, I'm sure there's a lot of programs and things you've done before you finally whittled away at the big boulder and created the sculpture that is your systems now. That's basically what I did in nutrition. I was the guy who did just give basic recommendations. I was the guy who did calorie and macro counts. But honestly, now I like to think about myself as I start where everybody else ends. Other people give calorie and macronutrient recommendations. A calculator can do that. So a calculator can do that. That's not coaching to me. Coaching is true knowledge, true wisdom, something you've done not just in a theoretical sense, but also just hammering at your craft until you've got the experience to do things that other people can't. Like I've got KPIs that don't exist in research because I've done over 1,000 labs. I've got things that I know work that that don't exist again in literature or in textbooks because I've done over 1,000 labs. And when you kind of go down my route, I knew I always wanted to work with professional athletes, and professional athletes have one currency: results.
Yeah.
So results, I want to be as freaking dialed in as possible. And I can't justify to myself that I can be as dialed in as possible unless I know your physiology from the inside out. So it's almost like a situation where, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this, the more you learn, the less confident you actually become. It's an inverse correlation. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So it's like the more I learned, I just started adding more labs. It's like, geez, okay, now I got to add this, I got to add this, I got to add this. And I kept kind of adding more and more and more and more and learning more and more and more until I had an absolutely dialed in philosophy and system at which I approach nutrition.
It's actually something that has, it's been very interesting since we did that show and like how we're working with clients right now, because I don't want to say that it's like imposter syndrome, but I know so much about what I don't know right now. that it's terrifying to me that I would go on the internet and recommend somebody to do something. Like there's a piece of me that it's like, I know I can help. I can like really radically change people's lives with the information I have. But also everything that I would tell you could be completely wrong because I don't fully understand everything that's going on in your labs. And I didn't even know that was like a piece of it, right? Like you can have enough information to help like 90% of the people, but also totally destroy the other 10%. It's kind of scary to think about like how deep some of this stuff really goes when you're trying to truly, we joked about it the other day. I don't like the word optimize at all. Like it's a scary word in our industry because like, I'm going to optimize your lifestyle. You go, are you? How are you going to do that? How does that work? Like what was the process for you? Did it start with blood work? And then when did you start to like peel the onion back on everything that we've gone through and what our clients are going through?
Sure. So it was about like in 2015 when I really kind of came across the philosophy which I operate today. And that is that the organism will adapt to the degree that it is healthy. So the healthier a physiology is, the greater amount of total stress load can go towards adapting from training stimulus rather than adapting from training stimulus plus dealing with physiological ailments at the same time. The body can only handle so much stressors. So when you optimize one's health, I actually get improvements in body composition as a byproduct of health. I actually get better adaptations from training as a byproduct from health, because the healthier one's physiology is, the less of their immune system has to focus on these different ailments. So that was kind of like in 2015 when I knew I was absolutely onto something. It's like kind of like that commercial that should have had a V8. I was like, God damn it, of course this is it. And so I kind of hit myself there. And then at that point, that's when it started with blood chemistry. So blood chemistry, that's something that is still the most underrated lab in existence today. There's a reason why you can get it in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, in Canada, in US, in anywhere. It has thousands and thousands of papers behind it. It's standardized worldwide, and nobody's using it properly because people are using it to identify sickness rather than to identify how someone can become healthier. There's many inferences we can pull from that. So as I kind of had my clients, and at that time I wasn't a practitioner, so my clients could get it from their practitioner though.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the blood work I began looking at and learning and researching from. And then as I learned more and more about that, my results with my clients absolutely transformed. It was night and day. And that's when I had my idea, but then my idea turned into something real. Because real, like a lot of people have ideas on podcasts and shit, but where's the receipt? Like where are the results coming from? Because you got to have results in your practice. And when I started getting crazy results on blood work, then I started incorporating urine, stool, hair, saliva, looking at every single metric I possibly could from the inside out. Because the more I learned, the less confident I became about where stressors can hide in one's physiology.
Yeah, Lord. Where would you say that is the difference? Like, like let's say when you started, and I'm sure you got results for your clients before you started this. What is the difference? What can, like on average, what would you say, that you're giving back in return to your clients now that you're doing blood work, stool work, hair, like how much better are you?
So it's the degree at which one can improve depends upon the current health of their state. So what I like to say is that I reset the barometer at which someone has belief in themselves. And this is physical and mental. So let's say, and this is a big conversation, but let's say you're adapting to 70% of your potential, because 70% of that adaptive reserve within your physiology is responding to a training stimulus. But the remaining 30% of that adaptive reserve still has to deal with another stressor somewhere in the body. Sure. May it be parasitic, bacterial, gut microbiome, may it be a hormonal imbalance, may it be inflammation, some form of heavy metal toxicity or chemical toxicity. There's many things that the body will prioritize first, before it cares about your biceps.
Sure.
That's just
Homeostasis. Yeah,
Yes.
It's got to keep us in the
100%.
middle.
The body will prioritize survival over training adaptation 10 times out of 10.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, it's more important.
Yeah.
Keep me alive.
Yeah. Your adaptive reserve will always focus on that stuff first. So if you have one ailment, then I may be able to reset the barometer at which you believe in yourself and your potential a little bit. But if you have many stressors, then it will be a lot. So for example, just to attach some random numbers to it, like I did previously, let's say you're adapting to 70% of your training stimulus, but the remaining 30% is coming from, is going to managing these different stressors in your physiology. Well, that's 70%. This is why I work with pro athletes, because a lot of times a pro athlete, they have trained so hard. We were just talking about the Olympics before we got on the air. So someone could train for an Olympics for 4 years. So they put their heart and soul into absolutely everything. So they think they are at their genetic limit. They're at their genetic potential. But what they're at is 70% of that genetic potential. Sure. Because once I remove those those performance anchors that are robbing them from maximal adaptation from training, they get, oh my God, I thought I was at my genetic potential and I wasn't even close. So then physically, they're able to take it to the next level, not because they're getting a stronger training stimulus, but because they're getting a stronger adaptation stimulus. And then beyond this, that genetic enhancement, that's the physical benefit. But the mental benefit is these dudes start setting bigger goals for themselves now. So because they are getting better results. So they just mentally, they're like, I didn't know this is the next level. I did not know I could go here. So now that's my target. And you guys tell me, how much does belief and buy-in and mindset play into getting results?
It's the difference in someone who's a good athlete and someone who's great. 100%. That's your differentiator right there.
Absolutely.
The brain.
So when we remove those stressors and we optimize health, we get that physiological and mental and emotional benefit from the athlete, and physical, mental, emotional. That's really the triad of making a 5% or a 1%er.
Because then, we all know too that, when an athlete is peaking and they're getting near their absolute best is also when they're getting close to being sick. We always, you're always trying to monitor, not trying to go too far and get someone sick. I mean, it's just the way it goes. Those two go hand in hand. But you're talking about eliminating that. And that would be, that is a game-winning, decision an athlete can make. Then, if they can eliminate the worry about that sickness at the end, then the peak is going to be 10 times better. So
absolutely. I work with a lot of UFC fighters, and and Doug would know this. How many UFC fighters get sick in the last couple of weeks of their camp?
The majority.
Especially when calories are super low and they're under recovering, they're trying to make weight, all that.
Yeah, and then that means you could have had an awesome fight camp, but then you're still going to perform poorly because the health of the organism did not allow a strong enough immune system to handle all incoming stressors for that long of a period of time. So all things could have been in alignment there. But if nobody's looking at your labs and nobody's removing the expenses of your physiological bank account, that's the thing. I don't always add things. My real skill is removing expenses. Because lots of times by the time an athlete comes to me, they're freaking dialed in. They've got a strength and conditioning coach. They have, say a strong mindset. They know their basics in nutrition. So what I do, I look under the hood, just like you would look under the hood of a car, just to see if you can tune anything up and remove anything that's impacting the performance of that car. I look under the hood with their blood, urine, stool, hair, saliva, and I always find a stressor. There's always something there. And when I remove that stressor through a therapeutic protocol, what they're already doing becomes magnified because they have one less expense in their physiology.
With pro athletes, especially UFC fighters that have a fight camp, it's going to be 12 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, for how much time they have. Are you taking labs numerous times throughout there, or is it just like a before and after? How do you structure the frequency of getting under the hood, so to speak?
So I'll typically only do a before and after. Because a lot of these things are long-standing. So, for example, just keeping into the line with the blood chemistry, your red blood cells have a turnover count of 120 days. So I've still got, 4 months until I have to look at those labs again for them to become irrelevant. A fight camp's never going to be longer than 4 months unless it's canceled a million times, right? So I'll really just look at all labs prior and all labs post. And then I'll do that as often as I can so that I can create trends and inferences. Like, for example, Sean O'Malley, he just works with me for the whole year. He doesn't hire me for fight camps. I work with him throughout the whole year. So I have a bunch of data on, so if he fights in Vegas, this is where we're going to be at. If he has a 6-week fight camp versus an 8-week fight camp, I know his physiology is going to do this. And I know because I'm not guessing. I'm looking at his hormones. I'm looking at his blood. I'm looking at everything. So I'll always do the before and after. And you can even pick things up. If we made a unique twist to his weight cut, for example, we may see something different in his post labs. We constantly whittling down until we reach that state where he's fully dialed in.
Whatever you're doing, Sean O'Malley is working.
Yeah, I'm super excited too, because we're going to do a full show on marijuana, because that guy is not messing around, especially. I got to figure all that out. I got to get that dialed in. What about the immune system in the video that you shot for me? I just want everybody to know that I was at 68% of my physiological capacity, physiological health, which might have been good enough to graduate college, but not good enough for my longevity and long-term health here. So we're going through the entire protocol right now, which we're going to dig into in many episodes.
After Anders asked this question, can you talk about like what goes into calculating that percentage?
Sure.
Yeah. One of the things in the video that you sent over that had all of our nutrition and supplementation and all that was how is working out only works if your immune system is working properly. When did that kind of connection start to make sense to you? Because I've been lifting weights for a very long time, and nobody has ever talked about like my immune system being optimized, for lack of a better word, to get good results. Nobody's ever discussed my immune system with me.
Sure. So let's kind of just draw it back a step and talk about how we even get results. Okay. So we don't actually build muscle in the gym, and we don't build strength in the gym. What we do is create a stimulus for muscle growth or a stimulus for strength development in the gym. Everything we do outside of the gym determines whether or not we actually adapt to that stimulus. So when people say something like, training is 30% and nutrition is 70%, that's nonsense. Training is 100% and nutrition is 100%, because one is a stimulus, the other is an adaptation. Unless you have both, you're not going to get optimal results. So it's stupid putting them in the same percentile category. It doesn't make any sense at all.
God, that's brilliant. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That is, I've never heard anyone.
I think Marcy just dropped the supplements off to Doug mid-show. Look at that.
Personally delivered Peptiguard.
Wow.
There you go.
All that means right now is I have missed my alarm for my Peptiguard.
Thank you.
I absolutely love it. That's what perfect timing for that.
I know, right?
So in that line of thinking, they're both 100%, because training's a stimulus. Have you guys ever met somebody who does train hard but doesn't have a lot to show for it?
Sure.
I think we all know that guy, because he's all stimulus, no adaptation. And yet there's also the character prototype that's really good with their diet, and they almost focused so much on recovery that they forgot to train hard. This person's doing breathing routines, meditation, yoga. They're doing so much that they're all adaptation, no stimulus. So you need to find that sweet balance between stimulus and adaptation in order to get world-class results. What most people forget, and this is where we go full circle back to immunity, is that stimulus and adaptation are both immune-driven processes. So when you're in the gym creating a training stimulus, that's purposeful, directed inflammation. So that's inflammation on purpose, because the only way to get results is to create enough stress to pull you out of homeostasis, to force the body to say, oh, crap, I better adapt and come back a better version of myself so that I can handle this level of stress. That is driven by inflammation. Inflammation comes from the immune system. Now, that inflammation, it's got cell mediators, it's got cytokines, it's got cell signalers. All of those things are what signal, hey, glucose, come down here and help with recovery. Hey, electrolytes, get over here. Amino acids, get over here. Hydration, get over here. All of those signalers are immune mediated as well. So the inflammation creates the stimulus, but the adaptive processes from all the signalers come from the immune system as well. So that's why I emphasize the philosophy originated from health, but then it became systemized through immune system function, because the philosophy was the idea, the system was immunity, because immunity is governing both stimulus and adaptation. And if I can maximize those, then I can take someone to the next level. So that's why I look for stressors, because any stressor in one's physiology is an insult to the immune system. As many insults as I can remove, the better progress an athlete is going to receive while working with me.
Yeah, I think the word, and I want to segue back to Doug's question. Like, if there's a word over the last 2 years that I think now I actually understand, even though I was using it before, is the word immunocompromised. Yeah. Where like all these people are just randomly getting sick. It's like that was a healthy person and now they got smashed by COVID. Like, what happened? Well, immunocompromised people are in bad shape. What does that actually mean? I didn't know. I didn't even have an idea really until I got the video from you, which said I'm at 68 out of 100 in my immune system. Or how do you build out 68 out of 100? Where did that number come from?
Right. So anything is, in order for something to be real, it's got to be quantified. Like, that's just how my brain works. I need to see it. I want to see something. It needs to be quantified and qualified in order for it to be legit. So the system that's been developed is a quantification and qualification of two categories: your visible stressors and your hidden stressors. The visible stressors are what we know on the surface are already impacting your physiology. So if somebody is on recreational drugs, if somebody is sleeping poorly, if somebody is psychologically or emotionally stressed, these are things we already know are going to impact your physiology that I don't need to really do your lab work for. So I have a large series of questionnaires that pick this stuff up. But what everybody really doesn't see is what's underneath the surface, and that's the hidden stressor category. So what is your current micronutrient status? Are you exposed to any environmental pollutants? What's your hormone status? What is the state of your current gut microbiome? Do you have any pathogenic infections, whether symptomatic or dormant? Both of those are considered stressors for the physiology. What I'm doing is I'm quantifying your visible stressors through questionnaires, and then your hidden stressors through advanced lab analysis. And I really consider that the art and science of coaching, because questionnaires give me the art of coaching because I get to know who you are. Whereas the lab, they let me know the science of coaching because I get to know what you are. When I know who you are and what you are, then I can truly create the most dialed in plan possible for your physiology. And the quantification categories, each one of those things I'm talking about, there's 10 for each, 10 visible, 10 hidden. Those are quantified, 10, we're getting that out of 100. And then that's where the overall score is quantified. And then I'm able to see exactly what we need to work on. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a lot of people are kind of upset when they see something bad on a lab. I love it, because the only thing worse than seeing something bad in a lab is seeing nothing at all. Because then it's like, maybe I'll try veganism. Maybe I'll try undulating. Maybe I'll try undulating periodization. Maybe I'll try paleo. That's worse. When I find something bad, I'm like, God damn it, this is it. Now the program writes itself basically at that point, because I just reverse engineer any stressor we found, eliminate those, and then you're away to the races.
That's beautiful. What about, so when you find somebody who's, saying obviously they're having sleeping issues, mental, issues. So at that point, do you work on lifestyle choices? Do you talk about, getting therapy if someone's having problems? So that's, not just giving them, something to take at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So this is actually there's fascinating research in the world of social genome, and it's even a fascinating word combination. There's experts in social genome, and this is the way in which you sociologically feel in your environment and how that impacts gene transcription. So there's certain states, like, have you guys ever heard of a eudaimonic way of being?
No.
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 Yeah. So a lot of people don't talk about this stuff. The data is fascinating. So eudaimonic is the opposite of hedonic. So hedonic is living for yourself. You want likes on Facebook. You want you want to feel better. Whereas eudaimonic is living for a higher purpose. So you want to serve others. You feel like you're put on this planet to do something for a higher purpose. There is absolutely excellent literature on a eudaimonic way of being, improving nearly any health parameter you can think about.
I just wrote did you read my article that I did that big? I just talked about that very thing. I had no idea
Oh, really?
there was any science behind it. Yeah. I talked about
dude.
the very thing.
I could send you a dozen studies after this call. It's unbelievable. And there's studies on eudaimonic way of being, hedonic way of being, studies on loneliness. And the thing is, because there's so much literature in this area, there's actually evidence-based questionnaires that you can do. So there's the psychological wellness score that's been peer-reviewed and approved. There is the what is it? I've got 3. I've actually got access to 3. I can pull them up if you want. But there are 3 evidence-based questionnaires that I'll send to a client if I perceive them to have these types of issues. And then if they fail those questionnaires, that's when I'll refer out. Because no matter what I do, if you don't have it going on correctly upstairs, I don't need to tell you guys that it's a wrap. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something where I mean, I'm a big fan of staying in my lane. So I don't ever try to be the expert of everything. So I'll happily refer out, but I want to make sure the refer out's even necessary through evidence-based questionnaires first. But
I would love for you to send me that information, because I can, as a coach, I can pinpoint certain athletes. I mean, if I were allowed to, I would tell them right now, until they do something about what's going on up here and about how they're approaching life, they will never, ever reach their potential, no matter what I do or anyone else does.
I want to tell you one thing really quick. So I actually found today, it's funny that we're talking about this. So if somebody, it works in both ways. So unhappiness can actually drive certain unhealthy markers within your physiology. But I actually saw in a paper today, and the paper is called 2 Distinct Immune Pathways Linking Social Relationships with Health, Inflammatory and Antiviral Processes. So what happened here in this study is absolutely freaking fascinating, is that so there's very well established that your mental state impacts your physiological state, but it hasn't been super established that your physiological state can turn right around and impact your mental state. And what was found in this research is that, and I can quote right here, furthermore, increased inflammation leads to sensitivity to social stimuli. So somebody who is pro-inflamed physiologically is more sensitive to social situations. And it's hypothesized that back in the day, if you were pro-inflamed, you were either injured or unhealthy. So you would be more skeptical about creating new relationships or new friends because you're quote unquote wounded animal. So somebody who's pro-inflamed is more sensitive to social stimuli. And this paper also found that if you have a low ability, and this is fascinating given current times, if you have a low ability to fight internal viruses, you are going to be more likely to place yourself into social isolation. So yeah, does that say a lot about what's going on right now? Yeah, you can actually, and I'll quote again, individuals with inadequate antiviral immunity engage in behaviors that minimize pathogen exposure and reduced affiliative behavior.
Holy cow.
It's there. I've got a whole folder of a bunch of studies on eudaimonic, hedonic, and loneliness, and how this impacts certain impacts. And it's no mistake why when I told you the title of this study, that is called 2 Distinct Immune Pathways. that's, that kind of draws back to that philosophy and that system that I've developing for years and years and years and years, is that anything, I don't care where it comes from, if it impacts your immune system, I want to know about it.
That is so brilliant. You pretty much explained everything that's going on in society throughout the whole world right now. Like the people who like want to be completely isolated and they're mad that people don't understand that. I get it. They're wounded animals, and that, like they're afraid that they're going to get sick and die. And I get it. That makes total sense. And then there's the other people, the people who feel, great, who feel healthy, and they're like, what are you talking about? I don't want to be isolated. I want to be with people.
Exactly.
It's science. It's not like just their brain. Their brain is affected by their physiology.
Yeah. This is established literature. It's not a Facebook post. This is something that's been out there.
I think
you will not find that on Instagram.
No.
That's not Fox News. Are you sure that's not from Fox News?
Yeah.
Kidding.
No, absolutely not.
It seems to me, at least this happened in my case, maybe I'm biased because this is kind of the pattern that I followed myself, that when I was young, I was trying to perform for myself, to play sports and get jacked and do whatever. And so I was learning a lot about training and lifting weights and eating healthy for myself so I could build muscle mass and do all that. And then eventually I was like, well, I know all this stuff. I could coach other people. I could help other people do this too, starting with my friends and then moving on to actually like paying clients and all that. And then once you have paying clients, or you write your 10th training program for your mom and she doesn't do it, or whatever it is, you go, wow, like I guess psychology is really important here. Like the science of behavior change and, connecting with them, figuring out where they're at, figuring out what they're actually willing to do, and adherence and all this stuff kind of comes later after you think you know it all. And then the results don't match the fact, or not the fact, the thought that you know a whole lot, because they're not actually getting the results that you think they should get with your perfect program. And so I kind of developed like the psychological thing afterward. Physiology came first, and then psychology kind of came later. Were you in that same ballpark, or did you from day one really study both sides of the coin?
Oh, I absolutely did not study both sides of the coin since day one. I thought everything was biology earlier in my career. And then when not everybody gets results based on your biology-driven protocols, you start thinking, maybe psychology has a whole lot to do with this. And I don't care about the only thing I care about is results. So whatever path I need to take to get there, that's the path I'm going to take. And I would be an absolute amateur if I said that psychology and emotions don't matter, because they do in every way you can think of.
If you said that, you'd be a fraud, because everybody who's ever been in high-level sports knows that is the only thing that really does matter. At the very end of it all, at the tip top, when you funneled out all those, people who thought they were good but they weren't, when it's at the tip top, all that matters is what you just said. I mean, that's who's winning.
A cool thing that I could mention too is that, and this is something that absolutely nobody talks about, is there's something you can actually take for loneliness, believe it or not. And obviously, I recommend a psychological examination, of course. But there's actually excellent literature on something called allopregnanolone directly impacting loneliness. So
really?
This is, I could definitely, and just so I'll tell you guys why.
Is that the chemical name for cocaine? Because cocaine works really well.
No. Wait, is that something where when they are alone, they just feel better in solitude, or it actually brings them out of solitude and makes them more willing to go be social?
I think those two are intertwined. So when you begin to feel better, you're going to be more likely to get out of solitude.
What is this called?
Allopregnanolone. So I'll always, by the way, for you guys and the listeners, I'll always tell you when something's my opinion, because I speak from the evidence. And this paper is called "Why May Allopregnanolone Alleviate Loneliness?" You can absolutely look that up and check it out. But long story short, pregnenolone, it's actually a downstream hormone from progesterone. So when you look at endocrinology, you've got pregnenolone, and then it can be converted into progesterone. But then 5-hydroxy-alpha will actually bring that to something called allopregnanolone. This all happens in the mitochondria. And then if you have allopregnanolone is actually something your body naturally secretes in response to acute stress to bring it back to homeostasis. So if somebody has been stressed out, there is actually a quick response from the body to secrete its own endogenous allopregnanolone to bring the body back to homeostasis. And people who suffer with extreme loneliness tend to have that hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis constantly going, and they're not making the allopregnanolone that helps put them back into a place of psychological and emotional homeostasis, because it's known as a neuroendocrine compound. So it's impacting neurology and hormones. So physiologically and psychologically, one can feel better. And allopregnanolone is the only thing I've ever come across to be directly correlated to something such as loneliness. So I thought you guys might just find that cool.
That is very cool.
Are there any downstream negative side effects to that? Like people, you think about just injecting testosterone. There's benefits and there's reasons you wouldn't want to do that potentially. Is that the same with allopregnanolone?
Yes, for sure, because it's bidirectional. So a bidirectional hormone means that an enzyme will convert progesterone into allopregnanolone, and that also can go backwards. So you can have a way too big of a progesterone overload as well, even if you take allopregnanolone itself. And it can also be converted to, I can't remember what it is right now, but it's bidirectional in both directions. So if somebody was, say, had a genetic predisposition to having issues with other hormones, then they would need continuous monitoring to make sure there wouldn't be any unnecessary side effects. And then, of course, like any drug, there's going to be a cost-benefit analysis. So provided somebody meets a context, then I think it could definitely make sense for them.
Did you take any just like straight up endocrinology classes, like at medical school, that type of thing? Or did you just learn all this just from reading textbooks on your own or just reading studies on your own? How did you learn so much about things like endocrine?
Right. So I'm a functional medicine practitioner. So I went through a very large curriculum on all things health. And then because of my career direction, I just put all those health things into helping high performance athletes. So basically using what an industry is not talking about. Performance talks usually just revolve around performance because they forget that health is a big part of that process. So I've basically used what I learned in the world of health and applied it to the world of performance. Now, I am a functional medicine practitioner. I've got over 20 certifications. I've got no idea how many certifications I have at this point, easily over 20, probably over 30. But I learned most of what I use, I've had to look up myself. Certifications and stuff, they're pretty good, but I'm not afraid to say that the majority I've learned is just simply from reading textbooks on my time and reading research on my time and just being fascinated about a current concept and then going down a rabbit hole. No certification's really done that for me. And if I had to quantify it, I've probably learned 10 times more in my own time than I have in official programs.
That makes you a good practitioner, though, because wouldn't you agree that all that, getting, your higher learning, all it does, it teaches you, number one, how to study. Number two, it introduces you to the topic that you want to go down the rabbit hole, which is where you go. And then, there's not enough classes that can get you the information you need to become an expert on a certain topic. You got to do that on your own. So.
And I think another benefit that comes from doing it on your own is no one forms your opinion for you.
Right.
Because let's say, Travis, if you read a study and I read a study, our interpretations might be different based upon our past experiences in education and what we even want to use it for. So I just think I love programs and stuff, but I still want to have my own opinion rather than regurgitate someone else's.
And I want to do my own studies too. That's my favorite thing about being in school is, I'm doing my own studies on true, really top-notch athletes that I know applies to high-level athletes. And so, no longer do I have to rely on some dumb guy who's never coached an athlete in his life. Or not dumb guy, but naive guy. So
It also seems that you've not just you need to go figure something out, and so you go look up studies to figure whatever it is, but you actually have time blocked into your day every day to just go read research just because you like reading research. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Anything that's important has to be scheduled. And if I want to work with the best people in the world, I have to keep my education. That's kind of what happens to good coaches, or not even coaches, to people in any industries. You get a legend or a guy, lots of times they rest on yesterday's laurels and they just kind of stay. They've got their big accomplishments and then they kind of stop growing. And that's when the new crowd comes up and beats them and becomes better and they become outdated. So I block in time to research like I block in time for this podcast.
Me too.
incredibly important for us to keep sharpening our blades.
Little shout out, you guys should read if anybody here read Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt. He talks all about, like number one, talks about like, describing the perfect day, where you want your life to go, and then blocking in everything. Like he literally scheduling everything as an appointment. And so it's been a big help to me, since I've been on this break to get back to doing the things that I really want to do. So shout out.
Another great one that sounds like it's pretty much in line with what you is I Love Deep Work by Cal Newport. That's an amazing book. It really, if you guys saw my Google Calendar, it's basically what Travis just said. My Google Calendar, it makes me look like a robot because it's like this block for this block for this block for this. And I don't budge. You got to protect your time like a hungry dog.
I read, you said this last time, didn't you? Deep work? Like, I'm pretty sure
I might have. It changed my life. It did. It did change my life. I've read it probably in 2014. I still recommend it all the time. And I've read about 1 million books in between then and now.
Yeah.
And Deep Work is still the one that I reference. It's such a beautiful. Yeah. He's got another one too called Digital Minimalism. That's worth reading as well.
His TED Talk's pretty rad as well. He's got a library of things that are pretty awesome. If you were a coach, holy shit, it's snowing outside.
Yeah.
That totally got me. Is it still where you're at, Mash?
Yeah, it's been
I just looked up and I was like, holy crap.
I live in Canada.
Dan's like, wait a second, you're excited about snow?
Anders, why didn't you ask me if it was snowing where I am?
Only snowing. Holy shit, the sun's out. Wow, I can't believe it. I feel like the daycare is about to call me and be like, podcast is over. There's snow. If you are a coach, what is like the entry point into taking this deep dive? Should every coach kind of start with blood work as the basis for getting into reading labs and understanding kind of what's under the hood?
Yeah, because first off, blood work I feel is the most valuable still, just because it has the most data. It's the most reliable. It's the most valid. It's the most properly measured. There's so many things you can draw from it. I mean, people, like I said in the beginning, it's the most underrated lab in the world. And conveniently, it's like $20-$40. And that's only if your insurance doesn't cover it, which it usually does. Yeah. So your yearly blood work is unbelievably valuable. So before, you start charging your clients, getting your clients to run $1,000 worth of labs when you don't know what you're talking about yet. Just have them get insurance to cover their blood work and really just start learning and more and more and more. There's thousands of papers for you to read out there. So blood chemistry is where I started. So I guess I tend to lean on my own experience in that. But I think due to its scientific validity, the amount of free learning you can do via research, on the topic, the fact that it's cheap for the client, that's too many positives. I really think that's where any kind of coach should start if they're interested in doing something that I do.
Because unless you're working with you're working with the tip top of the MMA. And so unless you're working with those guys, blood work probably be all you need to get to, because you're going to be lucky to get your clients to buy into what you're saying about how to improve their blood work, let alone you start looking deeper at the hair and all this other the stool. So yeah,
that's a good point too. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll be the first to say that what I do is not for everybody. It's incredibly comprehensive. So the adding in all of that other stuff is context specific for working with an elite, someone who's incredibly elite. Yeah. Sure. And wants exact prescriptions and not just given guidelines.
Yeah. Well, the thing that you did for us, I didn't even know existed on this planet. Like, I thought I had seen and talked to all the people that knew everything. And then I got an hour and 20-minute long video where I went, holy crap, this is way different.
So you reacted to it the same way you reacted to snow? Yes,
exactly. I had never seen it before. A decade in San Diego, and now Raleigh, North Carolina, and here's where we're at. My stool sample equals snow.
Can you briefly go over what you did with us as far as labs and what all is involved there?
Sure. Yeah. So you guys went through a multitude of questionnaires, the athlete assessment questionnaire, your sleep questionnaire, your cell function test, all these based on paperwork intake, so I can get an insight on all of the visible stressors. But then your hidden stressors involve 3 different blood tests: urine, saliva, and stool. So I'm basically looking at everything the body excretes so that I can look absolutely everywhere. And that's kind of, to kind of explain that, and to use a morbid example, if I wanted to cut out your cardiovascular system, I technically could. If I wanted to cut out your gastrointestinal system, I technically could. If I wanted to cut out your thyroid, your reproductive system, I could. If I want to cut out your immune system, I can't. It's literally on every single cell of the body, working 24/7 to protect you from anything that it needs to protect you from. Every single cell of the body. So because the immunity is absolutely everywhere, if I want to be honest with myself, I got to look everywhere. So I want questionnaires. I want blood, stool, urine, saliva, hair. I want as much data collection as I can get, because the immune system can hide anywhere. Stressors can hide absolutely anywhere. So I essentially had you guys run through questionnaires. And then also, I'm a practitioner myself, so I just sent you the labs in the mail for you to complete on your own time. Then once those labs are processed, they get sent back to me. I review the results. I create you a program and a video, and then you're off and rocking.
That's awesome. You would say the same about the neurological, which totally makes sense about everything you said. Everything, the neurological and the endocrine system, they roll together. I see that. Yeah.
It's connected to everything. So you got to look everywhere if you want that 1%er result.
Totally.
I'm really happy personally that we got to go through that, because I've been looking for something like that for a long time. Like where's something way more comprehensive than just getting the basic CBC blood panel like you were talking about earlier, like the thing that most people are used to getting with cholesterol and blood glucose and white blood cells and whatever else. Like every time I've ever gotten that, which has been many, many times, the doctor's been like, well, this all looks great. You're pretty healthy. And I think to myself, yeah, I am pretty healthy. I feel good about myself. All right. Thanks, Doc. High five. And I walk out of the office. And again, when you looked at my CBC, you went, yeah, this looks pretty good. No, nothing to see here. But then you got to like my stool sample and you're like, okay, we got some issues on this microbiome. We got some bacteria overgrowth, blah, blah, blah. Like it was a totally different story with a totally different test. And I didn't necessarily think I had some suspicions that might be a little bit the case, but not nearly as I wasn't nearly as healthy there as I was hoping I would have been. But I'm glad we did it, because now, to your point from earlier, like we found something, and now we're working with a particular protocol to help clear up those bacterial overgrowth issues. And I wouldn't have gotten that very many places. I feel like this is a very special thing.
And I'm kind of glad you brought that up too. And it's why I look everywhere, because your blood work did look okay. But then the result of your stool analysis is what screwed up your urine analysis. It's what messed up your saliva analysis, which came and went and coincided with your toxicology analysis. There was issues in nearly everything we looked at except your blood. So if you went and you got your yearly blood, you would have been, hey man, I'm ready to rock and roll. So that's the person who doesn't know what they don't know. Right. And when you don't know what you don't know, you can't act upon something to enhance your program design. So we just looked everywhere. We found a whole lot you could work on that had nothing to do with your blood, and that's going to take you to the next level in 2022.
Mm-hmm. How often are you doing this with yourself? Is it some people, like they say you shouldn't even program for yourself. You're going to do all the things you like to do, and you have blind spots to various things. Like when you run these labs on yourself, are you able to be as objective as you'd like to be, or do you outsource it to people that you trust in any way?
No, I'm objective. I'm objective, and I'll look at my own labs once a year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's totally different than like programming, because programming is there's too much room to be, subjective.
Yeah. I don't do my training programming. I don't do that, because I know that's where I'm going to lean towards the exercises and rep ranges and rest periods and frequencies that I like. That won't take me out of homeostasis. So yeah.
So you'll say the same. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So I almost always have someone else handle my programming, but I handle my own labs because
it's math, right? It sounds like it's simple math, you know.
Well, and you're basically forced to be objective because you're looking at numbers. Like I'm not, you know, like I could change how I build my programming and kind of justify it. But if something's off in my blood, I can't really justify that. So it's a little bit of an easier thing to not be so easy on yourself, as far as, you know, giving yourself some form of coaching direction.
Right.
Dude, I'm so stoked to dig into this with you. We got a lot to talk about.
It's gonna be. I'm so excited to have this dude on. Like, you're totally right. And there's like the three of us love training, but none of us, I would consider experts in, you know, nutrition. And Lord knows the amount of physiology this guy knows. This is great. I'm more of a biomechanics, you know, person. So this is just what this show needed. I feel like a little kid right now.
Well, we got to get you to go through the. We got to get you to go through the protocol.
Well, you know what? I was embarrassed until lately. Like, I was so unhealthy last semester. I didn't want to know because it would probably said you're going to die soon, and I didn't want to hear that. So, like,
and then we're going to talk about it on the podcast too.
Yeah, exactly. I feel better about myself.
There's going to be a funeral getting planned, and he's still on the show.
My wife has helped me. Like, I feel good now. I'm ready to. In Miami, I'm ready to work out with you boys.
So, I like it.
Yeah,
right.
It's going to be rad. Dan Garner, where can the people find you?
Easiest spot to find me is at Dan Garner Nutrition on Instagram. I post, it's basically like a research review. So if you're into any of this kind of cool stuff and checking it out and getting access to the real studies, my Instagram is two things. It's client results and studies. Anything in between is usually just noise.
And he's a new dad, so there's a kid pic that shows up every once in a while.
Yeah. If you want to see the cutest girl in the world, you can check that out too. So at Dan Garner Nutrition on Instagram.
Congratulations on that.
Thanks, buddy.
Grab a smash.
Go to mashelite.com or Instagram at mashelite.
Make sure you hit Mash up for a lot of personal coaching. That's what he's really into right now. Read his last article.
I just want to be a personal trainer all the time.
Doug Larson.
You bet. I'm on Instagram, Douglas C. Larson. Dan, to pair what they said, man, fucking stoked you're on the show, dude. This is going to be really fun.
Yeah.
I'm equally stoked, you guys. I think this is going to be real fun to do, and we're going to have some awesome chats. So I'm pumped.
I'm Anders Varner at Anders Varner. We are Barbell Shrugged at Barbell_Shrugged. Make sure you get over to Diesel Dad Mentorship. That's where all the busy dads are getting strong, lean, and athletic. And for all of you out there, there's a Walmart probably in your neighborhood. And what's cool about that Walmart is my face is on the shelf in 3 different boxes with Ageless Male Pro T. And you should head over to the pharmacy, Performance Nutrition, the Zone, Pump, Shred products. Look at the box. You'll see my one eye on there. It's like half face, one eye. And come and hang out with us. 2,200 stores nationwide. Friends, we'll see you guys next week.